Hello, everybody. How is everything going here today? Oh, let me go ahead and jump back over here. Move away the stream tablet there. All right, so big ideas, big hopes for today. We've been working on the Duelist on and off for the past. It's been a while. And it needs to just be. I'm just so ready to be done with this class. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I quite like the Duelist class, but I'm ready to put the final bolts together on the mark of the inward eye here, and then, move on to something else. And I think that something else is going to be weapons and armor and all of that fun stuff. And so I hope you guys are here for that journey, for that excursion. I also, once again, since I haven't been streaming as much, mostly just due to work schedules and the like, I have been kind of making notes, doing some things, and I came up with some ideas. And looking back, a lot of the things that I like to do as far as development for the RPG is figure out new technologies, figure out new mechanics that we can then later use in order to, to greater effect, to use all the parts of the creature that we are creating here in the RPG. And so one of the things that I was thinking about was we created the obscured condition a while ago, and so that is a land-based, location-oriented condition. And so I have some tweaks and some ideas on how to do that with a Dark Sun style campaign frame. Once again, we'll talk about that later. But land-based ideas, conditions that spread into areas that ratchet up in tiers, should give you some ideas. Because I am so excited about that. I find that sort of stuff so much fun to, think about, to design for. But until then, Mark of the Inward Eye Duelist is going to be finished today. No questions asked. Like, it's just gonna happen. It's gotta happen. Alright, so where we last left off was I had plugged in my base understanding for scholarly understanding here, which is a 5th level ability. So we're about halfway through the core progression of this subclass. And then I went and made burgers and they were awesome. So let's go ahead, jump backwards in time a little bit, about a week ago, to where we were writing this all down here. So as far as my notebook here says, scholarly understanding can non-magically cast comprehend languages with a performance time and duration of 1 hour. Learn 1 new language of your choice and gain proficiency with 2 skills of your choice based on your int or whiz modifier. So let's go ahead and see the mechanic that we wrote for that. You can cast the spell Comprehend Languages with this feature. When you cast this spell, it has a performance time of 1 hour and its effects last until the next time you complete a short rest. Cool, like that. It's a little bit more than what I had originally put in my notes, but I like it. I think that looks good. When you cast this spell, its effects are considered non-magical. Beautiful. At 5th level, you also learn 1 language of your choice and gain proficiency with 2 skills. I forget that word there. With 2 skills that use either your intellect or wisdom ability scores. Perfect. I think that is exactly translating the ideas written out here. And so, from there, we have the more complicated 5th level ability here, which is fine. I love complicated abilities. I love things that are going to be working in different ways. And so, this is going to be the ability that is all about creating different traps. So we have abilities that are all about learning about creatures. So now we have abilities that are designed to, 1, keep them in places so that we can learn more about them, but also then to make it so that they are able to be exploited by our party for damage per second, etc. So, traps. This is an investigator's type archetype, so it's not going to necessarily be a DPS focused class. It is more of, well, it's an investigator. It's going to be, you are learning things about your opponent so that you and your allies can take advantage of them, of those, things that you learn. Excuse me, as you go. So, So our current temp title for this ability is called 3 Steps Ahead. And let me go ahead and just talk through what's in my notes here about this ability. When initiative is rolled, choose a number of unoccupied spaces that you can perceive within 60 feet of you equal to your agility modifier. If you are your party's initiative representative, choose 1 additional space at 5th level, 2 additional at 8th, and 3 additional at 10th. So once again, it scales, but it's still always going to be based on your agility, so it is going to be always usable, always positive. It is always going to be something that the Duelist is going to have ready access to. These spaces are trapped. And I'm debating whether or not trapped is going to be a condition or like a pseudo condition or something along those lines. We're going to kind of play that by ear, see how that goes as we work on the actual core mechanics of this ability. When an enemy enters a trapped space, they are rooted until the start of your next turn. That might be end of their next turn. I don't know. Once again, we'll work on the timing. And take piercing damage equal to a roll of your proficiency die. Once a trap is triggered, it is destroyed and cannot be triggered again. Sidebar on triggering traps. A creature who becomes rooted while moving loses all remaining movement speed from that action. Creatures can trigger trap spaces through forced movement. So that way you can push someone back into a trap. They take, I believe, up to a d10 of piercing damage. So in the grand scheme of things, a rather small amount, but still an amount of damage. And then they are stuck in place until the rooted condition ends, or they have a counter for it. We will want to have some sort of minor narrative description here, which once again, we'll come back to that. So, when initiative is rolled, choose a number of unoccupied spaces that you can perceive 60 feet of you equal to your agility. If you are your party's initiative representative, choose 1 additional space at 5th level, 2 additional spaces at 8th level, and 3 additional spaces at 10th level. Alright. These spaces are... I think we are going to just go ahead and call this a pseudo condition. Trapped. It wants me to lowercase that. I probably will at some point. Actually, yeah, no. Let's just do it now. Trapped. So, the trapped condition, I suppose. The trapped condition is just something that's not going to fire until someone stands up. It's not a real condition because it is completely disguising the rooted condition. The rooted condition just means your movement speed is, I believe, reduced to 0, or like maybe 5 feet or something like that. It's the very harsh slow condition. That's honestly one of the ways that I think of it. We have slowed, we have rooted, and then I believe it is restrained and then grappled, as far as like a tier of progression. Where are you? Conditions. There we go. Lead, blessed, baned. Let's see here. Rooted, where are you? Okay, rooted. The rooted condition represents a reduction in a creature's speed and agility, greatly hindering their movement. When a creature is rooted, they can only move 5 feet each time they take the move action. If their speed is hindered, they cannot. Restrained. When engaged in wrestling with a component into the ground or ensnared in webs of giant spider, whenever a creature's movement is restricted by another creature or object, they are restrained. So this would be a restraint, not rooted. While restrained, a creature's movement is halted as they are held in place, only moving when forced to by the grappling creature or object. While restrained, a creature's movement speed becomes 0 and they cannot benefit from any bonus to movement. Any bonus or modification to their speed. The restrained condition ends. Gotcha. And so my note here is, should these conditions be combined for simplicity? And the answer is probably, and they probably will. Because slowed is just you're using your hindered movement speed for everything, which is incredibly useful. Yeah, so rooted is just, it takes your hindered movement speed, which is a minimum of 10 or half your base movement speed, whichever is higher. So if your base movement speed is 50 feet, that would mean your hindered movement speed is going to be 25. So that is going to be just what you use for stealthing, for all sorts of things there. So rooted is going to take that 25 and make it 5. However, if you are a slower character whose base movement speed is like 20 feet or less, that means your hindered movement speed is always going to be at minimum 10 feet. I don't think I have mechanics for slow characters like that yet, but once again, we're going to be working on ancestries a lot coming up, especially since we've gotten a lot of narratives things done with several of them. So that might be a thing that happens for dwarves. We're just going to kind of play it a little bit by ear there, but basically hindered movement speed for a character who is slow would just be 10. And so the rooted condition upends that and says, hey, your base movement speed is 5 feet, and then if you're hindered, you're not moving. And so I think that is going to be played into with, I think it's fatigue 4 or 5. Wasn't really planning on doing this whole run through of conditions here, but let's just go ahead and take a look. Oh yeah, fatigue 5, your character is rooted, and so that's also going to be played into with a lot of spell effects. Not a lot of them, but like the entangled condition is going to root your character rather than just reduce it to 0, so that way you can always move 5 feet to work towards escaping. So yeah, maybe that doesn't, but so for 3 steps ahead here specifically, we're going to use the restrained condition instead of rooted. Yeah, and so then the trapped pseudo condition is going to just refer back to restrained. Okay. When an enemy enters a trapped space, they are restrained until the start of your next turn? Let's say is restrained. Once again, there's a bit of a knock-on effect here, so I want to make sure everything is reasonable. So restrained, it does not say anything about another condition there. Because, yeah, incapacitated gives you the coup de grace, which is more damage. Incapacitated, unable to take actions or react. Paralysis, being bound, sleeping, otherwise finding themselves at the mercy of an adversarial foe. One, that's not possible anymore. There we go. Okay, so yeah, we are going with restrained. Restrained does not incapacitate. Knock-on effect averted. All is good. Okay. So when an opponent enters a trapped space, they are restrained. And since we don't have to worry about the restrained condition giving us access to the coup de grace, then we don't have to worry about when the restrained condition ends. So the restrained condition will then last until the end of the duelist's next turn. They are restrained until the end of your next turn. There we go. And so that way you can take advantage of the restrained creature. And we should also put a size restriction on this, because it's not necessarily reasonable for an investigative duelist to lay a trap for massive creatures unbeknownst to the rest of their party or to their opponents. And so a lot of what this mechanics and abilities is doing is a little bit of the flashback mechanic from a game like Blades in the Dark, at least as it exists within my mind, where there is a narrative concession here that the duelist is working a little bit outside of their typical party boundaries. And so we're cutting back, saying, during your last rest or something or another, you were here in this area, and you were able to set up traps or to, manipulate the environment in such a way that you are going to be able to ensnare or capture, I suppose, your opponents, or you're manipulating the environment in such a way that you are able to control the flow of battle here. That's probably the best way to put it. Sorry, a little bit of anxiety and fast talking is just kind of bubbling there. Okay. So we're setting traps. That's all we're doing. When an opponent, we're putting a size restriction on it, once again, because it's reasonable for your allies to recognize where traps are, because they've worked with your duelist before. They know your stuff, I suppose. However, opponents would not, and so the first time they enter a trap space, the trap will fire. So when an opponent that is one size larger than you or smaller that is at most one size larger than you, honestly both work fine, or smaller, enters a trap space, they are restrained until the end of your next turn. There we go. They're restrained until the end of your next turn and take piercing damage equal to a roll of your proficiency die. Now, go away, Google. Now, why proficiency die here? Because on one hand, you're a duelist, you probably have weapons, you have weapon training and all of that sort of thing. But I still want this to be, you're not required to have a weapon. I want this to be something that can work maybe if you don't have a weapon or if you've been disarmed. I think, now, granted, this is not how the mechanic is intended to work, but I can think of a clever GM using or like relying on an ability like this to talk about things like in a social sense. And so, like, if the party is at like a sort of a ballroom scenario, they can set up a trap here and basically maneuver a political opponent towards it. Once again, no weapon required, and then you would roll your proficiency die as like social reputation damage or like something along those lines. Once again, not how the mechanic is intended, but like I think that there is application there, and so by tying it to your proficiency die, it inherently ties it more to your skills, your attributes, and your character's general know-how and understanding of how situations like that work, rather than saying you are now ensnared in a pit of spikes that we made from a bunch of daggers or something along those lines, which is a more close literal interpretation. So bit of a side tangent aside there. Damage equal to a roll of your proficiency. Once a trapped space is triggered, it is destroyed and cannot be triggered again. Nice and simple. Now, rooted, so restrained. So now, just to make sure I've got everything here from my side notes in my journal. Restrained, I think it just automatically sets your speed to 0. Creature's movement speed becomes 0. So no matter what, if a creature moves into that space and becomes restrained, their speed is 0. So all remaining movement speed from that action just becomes forfeit. So that is good for this little side note here. And then creatures can trigger trap spaces through forced movement. Which, I mean, is there a good, elegant way to include that data in this ability here? Enters a trap space, enters, or is moved into a trapped space. They are yeah. There we go. Cannot be triggered. I'll probably just be tweaking stuff like that there. Okay, so we've got the mechanics set up. Good. So it looks like I've got 2 additional features here for this subclass before we can go and talk about weapons. Gosh, let's talk about weapons. All right. So our next features are going to be our 8th level capstone features. Our first one here is... Hell yeah. Okay. Sorry, I am just reading my notes here, making sure I understand what it is before I say it. So, our feature here is all will be dust. And so, this 8th level feature here is going to be a weapon flourish that a mark of the inward-eyed duelist can take on their turn when they score a tier 3 or 4 result. Actually, I believe since you have resolute attacks from your base, this could trigger on anything. You know, hang on. No, that's fine. That's fine. Resolute attacks make sense for a duelist because it is, once again, extending the flourish to all of your attacks. And so, since this critical effect has a cost to it in that it is going to be reducing momentum value. It also does have an end condition of shifting the calling card condition, which that is okay, so here, let me just read my notes here. Weapon flourish costs, I don't know, maybe 3 momentum. I'm already thinking that that's going to need to go up. That might be a 5. This might be a 5 momentum cost. When you attack a creature with the calling card condition and perform this flourish, they become vulnerable to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage until they lose the calling card condition. So a lot of what this class has done, or sorry, this subclass has done, is understanding what creatures are vulnerable to, resistant to, immune to, condition resistance immunities, etc. And so, with trapping, we are now inflicting conditions in order to hold them, in order to halt their movement, in order to slow a creature down. And now, at 8th level, we are fully turning everything the full 180 degrees, and now we are inflicting vulnerabilities upon our opponents for us to exploit. And our party members as well, honestly. So, one, we do want this to be rather expensive so that it is not, we open up the entire battlefield to vulnerabilities, because that would be, I mean, the short answer is it would be broken, but like that would become less of a fun ability, one, as a GM to run, but also less fun in the way that the other players capitalizing on this vulnerability will at least probably think of it as more you are controlling the battlefield and just working in accord with another player's plan, rather than, I don't know. I view it as one player dominating the combat scenario, and because you have access to this feature and can do it basically on a whim, you can start turning it on really quickly, really fast for all combat scenarios, and so therefore it's rather easy for you and your party to go, which could become an unfun scenario, especially to. So I think that's why we're going to boost the cost. Okay, so let's go ahead. And write this up here. You see the weaknesses in everything around you, and have honed yourself and your party to exploit them with precision. You learn the following weapon flourish. You learn the following weapon flourish, yeah. Alright. if you're also just tuning in, this is a little bit of me showing my hand as far as nerddoms. I am a fan of the Inhumans, and this is a very Karnak-coded ability. But shh, don't let Disney hear. Cost 5 momentum. Weapon. When you perform this, yeah, because one, we have to mention that this is targeting a creature that has the calling card condition and can perform it against any creature that has the calling card condition. When you use this flourish, the calling card momentum, we don't need to capitalize this, is decreased by 5, as noted in the cost, but like okay, so the target of your attack has vulnerability to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. These their abilities persist until the creature loses the calling card condition. If the target of this flourish, hang on, I want to make sure I'm using proper design language for the game for here. If the target of your attack is resistant or immune to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage, they take damage of these types as if they were as if they were not what, resistant, immune, or vulnerable. If they were not resistant, immune, Target of your attack is resistant to immune to bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. They take damage of these types as if they were not resistant or immune or vulnerable. To these damage types. Boom. Okay. Okay, and so from there, is there anything else we have to write for this feature? You see the weaknesses in everything around you and have honed yourself and your party to exploit them with precision. You learn the following weapon flourish and can perform it against any creature that has the calling card condition. When you use this flourish, hang on, these can be lowercase c's. When you use this flourish, the calling card's momentum value is decreased by 5. All will be dust. Cost 5 momentum. The target of your attack has vulnerability to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Excuse me. These vulnerabilities persist until the creature loses the calling card condition. If the target of your attack is resistant or immune to bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, they take damage of these types as if they were not resistant, immune, or vulnerable to these damage types. Actually, yeah, hang on. We are limiting this to just creatures that have the calling card condition. And since you're only able to manipulate one calling card at a time unless you're a party of multiple duelists, because like this is just going to be something that you would then throw directly on the boss of the encounter. So maybe we don't need the 5 momentum cost. Maybe we can get away with this being a 3 momentum cost instead. That way it is, you know, rather it's honestly pretty straightforward. Since once again, this is not going to be, you're not going to be invoking this against multiple opponents unless there are other duelists in your party. And honestly, that might be a really cool sort of thing, just because it's a, yeah, you know what? We're gonna swap the 5 back to the 3. I have come around and agree with my old self on the design of this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It still has a momentum cost. It still is going to cost. Like it's this is not a free ability by any stretch of the imagination. And so yeah. Like my worry of other people on the battlefield wanting to, or like feeling restricted by you inflicting vulnerability and therefore kind of being able to have credit of a sort in all attacks against a creature. It goes a little bit out of the way when you have multiple duelists on a battlefield who are all controlling multiple calling cards. And so, since we have that, they can shift their calling card around, or they can have it stack up on the same target. And so, since a creature can only have this once, and since it only is going to reflect the highest value calling card on them, as far as damage reductions, you can't just spread it around. It is localized target. And so, yeah, my earlier concerns were not warranted because I was not thinking about how many calling cards a creature can have on it and how many calling cards can be manipulated at a time. So yeah, no, three momentum cost, we're good. It still has to, because Jesus Christ, that's a powerful flourish. But like, we're good. So our final feature for the Mark of the Inward Eye Duelist. Thank goodness, where it's finally here. The truth. So while you have temporary hit points from the calling card condition, you have True Sight at a range of 60 feet. And True Sight is just going to be breaking down illusion spells, and it is decreasing the obscured condition. Those are the two things that True Seeing does in my game here. And so I think that makes perfect sense for this archetype, who is an investigator, who is seeing weakness, who is exploiting monsters' biology, and it just works. So while I should raise that up there just because I'm betting my lower third is going to pop up any second and obscure it. All right, yep, perfect timing there. So while you have temporary hit points from the calling card condition, and once again, so that doesn't mean you have to have the calling card condition on you. You can get those temporary hit points and then throw it to someone else, and then invoke your All Will Be Dust, giving them the BPS vulnerability, and you still have the calling card condition's temporary hit points on. So it's basically just reducing damage to maintain temporary hit points, and that'll get this condition to last longer on you. So while you have temporary hit points from the calling card condition, you have True. That's not how you do it. True Sight at a range of 60 feet. And so once we have like all of our text done right, we will have like all of that text around here. So there we go. We are done. Ooh, it feels so good to have the Duelist feature complete. Well, not playtest complete, but like feature complete. So this is something that we can then take to playtesting, and then it's going to be scaling values around, seeing what numbers work where, and what will make a satisfying play experience. That's the goal. Okay, so, man, that feels good. Yeah, that feels real good. Okay, yeah, we are on Explore, not on Combat. I just wanted to make sure because I have forgotten that so many times. Okay, so let's go ahead and start bringing things from this drafting tab over into our core document. Mark of Black Flame has that. Yeah, we already put that in here. Sweet. Mark of Long Shadows looks like it has also been brought over. Very nice, very nice. Mark of Midnight Steel has not. So let's go ahead and just, since this is rather easy to do, just copy paste. I'm seeing we have two comments that we need to address here. It's probably pretty simple, but let's go ahead and make sure. Oh, yeah. We address it all. And yeah, so it's just gonna be better names for these conditionals, which actually I do have some of those, so let's just go ahead and plug that in. We have the Baned here one, which is going to be called Reversal of Fortune. Blinded, moment of clarity. Bloodied, vital scourge. Dazed, strength in focus. That's a good name. I like that. When did I write this? This was on June 10th. Okay, so it's been about a month. Glad that still sounds definite. Not a huge going from a strong one to a kind of weaker one. Echoes of distant thunder. That feels a bit much, but we'll be fine. Frightened. Never back down. Rooted becomes. Oh, did we not do one for prone? Oh no, yeah, we did. Wind at that Y should be capitalized. Yeah, I think so. All right, yeah, there we go. And so, rooted is at the ready. Slowed, clarity and caution. And then finally stunned, inspiration of terror. Okay. Now, unfortunately, we have to alphabetize. So A, C, E comes before I, so let's just go ahead and boom. L, M, N. Okay, so we're gonna go moment of clarity, then never back down. And then what? O, P, Q, R, S. So reversal strength. Reversal strength. R, S. T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. So then it would just be vital, scourge, and wind at your back. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of better names there. And then we can just get rid of the ones that we duplicated instead of cutting. Go. Let's see here. Mark of Midnight Steel here. We were also worried about Harrier's Strike here, as far as naming goes. Yeah, we said, yeah, we can keep that. That seems pretty reasonable. Fix the special action and roll table title to say Harrier's Strike. That's a fantastic call there. Thank you, me. Reorder alphabetically. Yeah. Oh, improved cunning strikes here. Cunning evade to daring. Efficiency. What? Oh, I have them backwards here. That's How foolish. Okay. And then I was also saying to call this efficiency and cunning, which... Look, that once again, it feels like a bit much. It feels a bit... but... Gotcha. Then I also have a note here to check if that's in the base class as well. So that's a is riposte before evade. Oh wow, it is. There we go. Evade before riposte. And then Mark of Black Flame. Dang, we are going bug hunting. Enchanted Blackfire summons here at level 5. So this says to level 5 here. Enchanted Blackfire summons. There we go. To call this Enchanted Spark. When you conjure a weapon out of Blackfire, you get Falling Flourish. Okay, makes sense. All is good there. And then 8th level here is going to get the title of Sigil of Dark Flames. Hang on. Then Consuming Darkness, Catching Fire, True Flame. Those are all good. Alright, so that fixed several of our bugs there. And so now let's go ahead and copy over the inward eye, since right now it is without complication. All right. And that sure looks like everything is good and wonderful. Let's go ahead and mark both of these here with check marks. Okay. Oh. We're winning today. This is good. This is good. This is what we need. I'm not even touching that anymore. Okay, so let's fold that up there. Let's fold up ancestries. We have wizard class here. That just looks like a copy of the wizard class. We'll have to come back to it there. So what the plan here is, now that we've got this done, is per the stream title here, let's talk about armor, let's talk about weapons, let's talk about all sorts of cool stuff there. So let's go ahead and jump over to where that is in the core rulebook here, and that answer is adventuring equipment. Yeah, it's blank, but that's okay. That actually is perfectly fine. Because I have copied information from every edition of this game into these tabs over here. And of course it couldn't fit into one Google Doc, because for as much as you saw of that one there, that's one tab. I've got hundreds. So that means I actually do know where this all is. For us to go through. And the answer is not in the ones that I've been showing so far. Copy chapter 5. This should be classes. That's classes. Yep, so it's going to be in this one here. Chapter 6. Well, it's not chapter 6. Never mind. It was originally chapter 6. I've just been doing such a massive restructuring of how this all works. So let me take one quick second. Actually, you know, we'll leave this the way it is. Okay, so this is chapter 7 drafting. We're going to have kits. We are going to have armor. We are going to have weapons. Okay. So here, give me one quick second. I'm going to step aside for just a bit and grab something as something to show. Be right back. Okay. I have found it. Alright, so jumping back here. Actually, you know what? Boom. Big chat. Alright, so this is the first edition of the game. I'm gonna just kind of get to go through here with you guys. Well, granted, we're gonna see how things have changed since, you know, since I've been designing it, but my very first idea for what this game would be was, more than anything else, a weapons mod for 5e. So it would just be better, more interesting weapons to be used in the game. And so I had some ideas as far as, what all it could be. I wasn't really thinking, let's make a TTRPG out of it. I was thinking, I want your fighters to have something cool to do, and like show how they can harness the power of their weapons and their training, just kind of in combat sequences. Hang on, I don't know if everything looks good as far as rendering, lag, coding, and everything. So it's just coming through a little choppy. So there we go. That should at least just help me out there. Yeah, this white book here is the first edition of the game. So we're gonna go ahead and open up, and I'm just gonna kind of share some of the pieces and ideas that I had there, and we're going to kind of talk about where we are today. As far as where we start, table of contents mostly the same as far as just kind of people I quite care about in the industry and who have genuinely inspired a lot of my time as a designer here. I've got the original creating a character thing here, which honestly is still pretty much the same. A lot of this comes from here. I will show. A lot of this comes from just adapting 5e's stuff. It even says the Mystic Multiverse, because I thought that was going to be the name of the system here. That this was going to be like the Mystic system, because stupid fact about me, my favorite 5e class is the Mystic from the Unearthed Arcana that's like 10 years old. Because of course it is. And I might get to play one of those in a long-term campaign eventually. Who knows? But yeah, no. That's it. And so a lot of this is just headers and saying, hey, we're going to fill this in later. Playing the game here, it's sort of similar, honestly. Roll dice. Of course, this was back when, because this was a 5e hack, this was a 5e mod. This was the game working on d20s. The whole core die of 2d12 is something that came about much later. And I can pinpoint when that is with a quick Google search, but we'll come to that in a sec. But yeah, no, it's you roll a d20 and then advantage and disadvantage. I love the simplicity of 5e's advantage disadvantage system of just rolling the die twice and taking the higher or lower result, so much that if I was going back in time and remastering 4th edition, I would just do that instead of the +2 -2 system. But this game is inherently descended from 4th edition in that way, in a way, because I wanted there to be multiple tiers of advantage and disadvantage. And so originally, you actually saw me change something earlier in this stream here. It said coup de grace, you get advantage tier 3 on your attack roll. Advantage tier 3 is no longer in the game, but that came from literally this book here, where advantage was just, for every level of advantage, you add or subtract a d4 from your attack pool. And so you could have advantage tier 1, which is 1d4 to your attack, advantage tier 2, which is 2d4, and tier 3, which is 3d4. And then disadvantage worked in the exact same way, and you would just cross out when there's overlap. Well, right now, we don't work with that mechanic anymore because we have the 2d12 and the power table. And so, quite literally, the power roll by MCDM Productions, by like they were doing their running the game series, not running the game, designing the game series on YouTube before they canceled it for understandable reasons, honestly, but it was wonderful and I loved it so much. But they were also doing that over on Patreon, and I have a hard time. Well, it's not that I don't want to spend money on Patreon, but like I have tight finances. And so, but being able to read through their mechanics, read through their stuff, have them explain the design processes behind what they were doing with Draw Steel and the power roll there was one of the most inspirational things for this game. And so I immediately was like, I want to do a power result table like that. And I've been wanting to figure out how to properly do a curve in that regard. And a lot of that original idea and desire came by greatly inflating the importance of advantage and disadvantage in the system, so you would have more dice, and that would create this somewhat structured curve in that way. And I'm not going to pretend like this system wouldn't work. It would. And I still quite like that idea, but I like the current situation, the current place of the game much more than that. Over here, once again, this is just this is a bit of a just kind of a walk back here. But adrenaline, endurance, and exhaustion. When I was in school at Webster University and taking some analog game design classes for actual TTRPG development, I've actually got those books back there as well, where I grabbed this from. I had a pitch for a Predator TTRPG, very similar to the Alien RPG by Free League and such. And so one of the core mechanics that I was working on for that pitch, it never got made. It never left the pitch stage, was an adrenaline, endurance, and exhaustion mechanic, so that we could have players running away or like running into fight, and it would be it would be a very cool sort of thing. I'm imagining obviously the end of the classic Predator movie, but also like I believe it's the Fur Trader Camp assault in Prey, where you have Naru and Taba, and they are fighting with the feral predator. He's launching himself with a spear over it, and that's the style of gameplay that I wanted to emulate there. And once again, it's just a header, but the idea was to incorporate some of my ideas from there into this game to give it more of a unique identity. And to an extent, we've got that. But honestly, if I were to go ahead and make an RPG based on those ideas, it would look very different than Underkeeper as it is right now. Where right now what we have, instead of adrenaline, we have willpower, which is just letting us recharge abilities faster, or to stave off death longer. Whereas we have exhaustion, we have fatigue, which is fundamentally the same thing as exhaustion in 5e. And so, since the dying condition in this game in Underkeeper is different, the willpower will cut into our dying more, and so it does kind of have that sort of adrenaline nature to it. And so I'm just once again, if I were to design a game either based on Predator or based on some of these current ideas or these past ideas, that's sort of how I would go about it. But once again, that's just a header in this document that I'm kind of waxing a bit of poetic about. Man, I've got the classic character ancestries list here. Dhampir, the vampires, Draconian, now Wormsfang, Dryad, ooh, kind of a Eladrin style spider folk. Dwarves, elves, fauns, gnomes. Gnomes no longer exist. Good riddance. Goblins, half elves, half giants, half orcs. All of those technically are in the game, but they are relegated to half ancestries, which I think is just better design. Halflings, humans, seraphs, tieflings. Our classes we had cut it down to 5. Ah, that's so nice. Why did I have to keep coming up with cool new mechanics? 5 classes would be wonderful to support. Those 5 classes being the Aberrant, the Fighter, the Speaker, the Warden, and the Wizard. Okay. And now the part where I actually got this book from, since this was a 5e mod for weapons, we have the weapons. And so, let me just kind of see if I can kind of walk through here. So, club, simple weapon, bit of a description. Come on, camera, share it there. So actions and attacks. So what you can do with it, you can make a melee weapon attack. It lists exactly what you roll in order to hit. Your damage die is on the same roll as the attack roll. It has the cost of the weapon and then unique properties. So weapon properties was kind of what I was trying to introduce with this game to make weapons more interesting in 5e. And I think it would have worked better than the weapon marks or weapon properties that they did in 2024 5e there. And so like we could have even custom ones. So actually the dagger right below it is an even better example. Where it has, come on, focus, there we go, a little bit better. It has a property called Backstabber. It's got finesse, it's got versatile stuff. You can make a melee attack and a ranged attack there. And so yeah, this is some of my earliest design, and so obviously it doesn't hold up with what I want the weapon design to be in this game. But let's go ahead and jump down to the weapons section of this area here, and you will see it's pretty similar. Let's see here. Yeah, there's a dagger. So we can compare and contrast. Oh, hang on. I am still big full screen here. Let me... Boom. There we go. Yeah, it's still pretty similar here. So, dagger. Description. We haven't added that in yet, but similar weapons. So that's just for flavor purposes so that you can reflavor your dagger as any of these things here per my ideas here, of course. Like, simple stuff there. Attacks. You can make a melee weapon attack using your might versus an opponent's fortitude. I don't love the formatting of this, and so this is definitely something that we're going to be tweaking, that we're going to be changing. But then properties here. Backstabber, trained. So if you're trained with this weapon, you have your second level of proficiency. You get this feature here. But otherwise, you still get versatile, which you can use your might or agility when making a melee weapon attack with it. So that actually should be might, agility. You have finesse, which is... I mean, we're going to be changing a lot of this. So honestly, actually, I'm going to just undo that there. But like, you have all of these properties. You have 2 tiers of progression now. And then you have a list of the different flourishes that you can do with your weapon. That come base with the weapon. And so, with a dagger, yes, you're just wounding. But if you have a great club here, you can crush and then slow the target down because you are breaking their kneecaps in combat. you can decelerate them, and then all of a sudden, until the start of your next turn, the target cannot defend using armor points against attacks that affect their reflexes. And so you are affecting it with all of these different conditions. You are approaching the battlefield more tactically than you would in 5e, where it is I attack and your weapon is all basically the same thing, just with a different die. Now 5.5e does that as well, but once again, it's not quite the same, and I find it a little bit clunkier. But once again, it's time to start plugging this all in. And so that's weapons. That's the kind of core idea for weapons there. Armor. Here's a bit of a story. Armor is something that I have been thinking about since I was working and doing my last campaign that I recorded. I have it up on YouTube. I wouldn't recommend going and watching it because it's like 70 something episodes. They're all like 3 to 5 hours. It's long. Don't worry about it. But one of the things that I learned in that campaign was about armor design. I mean, I learned a lot about game design work just by running the game. Of course you do. But I enjoy homebrewing different pieces of equipment for my party, and I wanted to test an idea that I was having for what weapon design, for what armor design would look like in this game. And once again, going back in time, it was a 5e hack. This game was a 5e hack. It was 5e coded. And so I was using things like armor class as a targetable thing. I was thinking it was going to be more 4th edition, like where it was you target your fortitude, your reflex, or your will, or your armor. But and then maybe players could like choose if they want their armor to be defended against or attacked, or like or maybe it targets your armor first, and then as long as your armor has like durability, then it would target your fortitude, reflex, or will. Something along those lines. I'm not 100% sure what that would have been. I don't have a time machine and my memory isn't great. But I like the idea of armor durability. And so when I tried to implement this into my last RPG, campaign, I gave my party the option to purchase, I think it was called like resonant plate or something like that. And it was a piece of plate armor that gave you a flat 17 AC. I think it counted as either a medium or a heavy plate. And so it was cheaper than whatever. It was positioned in such a way that it was, on one hand, a little bit better than standard armor at purchasing, and then as you would take critical hits, the AC would be decreased throughout gameplay. And so eventually you would have, alright, so you have this thing here that sets your AC to 17. We're good, we don't need to do anything about that. But the longer you wore the armor, you would need to then start taking it back to repair it, and so it would add that sort of verisimilitude kind of into the gameplay loop there, which is something that I quite enjoy and want to kind of emulate within the RPG. And so the thing is, when I introduced this armor to my campaign, one of my friends bought it and took it, and I greatly appreciate him because it didn't work. But everyone else at the table wholesale rejected it and said it was a terrible idea and they would never equip it to their characters. And that taught me a lot. And it hurt a little bit, but at the same time, getting such a strong reaction to having an armor class that breaks down throughout gameplay helped me to rework this idea to the point where I think it is much more usable now, where it's much more workable. So the way armor currently works in the Underkeeper RPG is that AC is no longer something that you can target. So you have your character's defenses, and that's going to be their fortitude, their reflex, and their will. But then you also have this resource called armor points. Armor points regenerate on a long rest. So no matter how many armor points you start with at the end of the day, you have that many until you rest again. Armor points are given out by wearing armor, of course. And then there are a couple of edge cases where I think like there's probably a type of Dragonborn or Worm's Fang that gives you an extra armor point. The Berserker and I believe the Pugilist have like an unarmored stance, and so that gets you some armor points when you're not wearing armor. But the point still stands that for the most part of this game, wearing armor gets you armor points. And that's going to get you a certain number of armor points at the start of the day. So when you buy, let's say, padded armor here, you're probably going to be getting it, if you're getting it at like a nice place, you're going to be getting it at a pristine quality. And so at the start of every day, you are going to get 4 armor points. So you can take the defend reaction 4 times, and that will reduce incoming damage to one of your targeted defenses by your defense amount. And so that's just your armor soaking up the hit. And so then that armor point becomes unavailable to you until you complete a long rest. Then I have cost to purchase, cost to repair. So pristine armor can't be repaired up because it is the highest quality here. And then average sale value here. So kind of cooking in a lot of ideas about how commerce in the game works. I figure these numbers are probably going to go up so that they can be differentiated, because right now all armors are basically the same here. I've been throwing some comments on the side here when I was at work and didn't want to write it down in my notebook, but that is what it is. So like it's going to depend on material grade, it's going to depend on all of that. So yeah, but also with armor comes resistances. And so this is one of the things that I was toiling with. Like, as far as damage mitigation goes in the game, you have outright mitigation, you have avoidance, and then like you have battlefield tactics to like avoid it. You have negotiation powers and such. And that's going to be role play focused, and there's going to be a section in the book on role playing for that. But I think throwing on armor should give you an amount of resistance here. And so that's going to cut down on a damage type. It's going to be the 3 basic ones. And I think we have a couple instances where you can take a damage resistance that is non-standard, but I believe the classic example there is hide armor protects you against cold because you're wearing like a bear skin in the cold, and that's going to keep you warm. But light armor, you automatically get 1 option. Medium armor, you get it gives you 2 options, and you choose between them when you take the armor. And then heavy armor, I believe, gives you 3. However, and heavy armor is going to give you more armor points at all different tiers. It's going to cost more, but it gives you greater range of choosing your resistances. But it also will cut back on your movement. and gives you some disadvantage on skills. And then similarly, shields. Shields work as sort of a temporary hit points system for armor, where you can get additional armor points and it will tank hits and not damage your armor. So you can then repair shields, etc. Cuts down on different skills based on what you have wielding there. You have different movement speeds based on how heavy the shield is, and so a lot of this stuff is going to just be put together during character creation, and then as we're taking things down, we can throw some different properties on them. And so I think I like this system for its tactility, for its overall not that complicated, but it is more detailed. It gets you a lot more ability to customize your armor, customize your loadout. And just, yeah, I quite like how this system works. And so a lot of what we're going to be doing as far as updating our weapons, updating our armor system here, is going to be modernizing. And so that's what I've been doing. Let me go ahead and jump back to the big face cam here. All right. This section of the notebook here is all of my updates to armor properties, and then specifically weapon properties and weapon flourishes. So I have been going all in, all out, figuring out different ways to word things, different ways to present things. There's, on one hand, the reason it takes up a lot is because it is rather repetitive. And so I'm just trying to figure out the proper language, the proper mechanical attributions that each of these properties, each of these flourishes should have for the RPG. Let's go ahead and jump back to the main view there. All right. So, and similarly, as a part of that also, weapons are going to be getting a buff. Actually, weapons are going to get a little bit of buff. Armor is going to get a more substantial buff as we just kind of tune the curves for medium, light, and heavy armor to, one, justify the price tags that we want to kind of put on them as a baseline standard kind of template for game masters, but also to justify the expenses as far as movement speed, as far as brain fart here, skill disadvantages. That's going to go on your character sheet there. But yeah. Okay, so let's just go ahead and the only way to begin is by beginning, so let's begin. Armor, heading 2. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna just copy all of that here. So we're going to create an armor table here. Actually, you know what? Let's go for a big copy. Light armor, just all the way through our pieces here. And shields. Of course, shields. Shields absolutely count as armor in the RPG. Okay. Go ahead and process Google. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we can set that aside and just focus on our big tab. So, tweaks here to light armor formulations was going to be reducing the ragged armor points here to 2. So that's going to go and be echoed across all light armors. So depending on what tier you get, they're all going to have the same number of armor points, which is important just for kind of parity's sake. But that means that, well, one, we're going to have different prices for different armors based on things. We're going to have different resistances for different armors. And then, like, we can then start to just tune things differently so that each armor set feels unique. That's the goal. We want each armor set to feel unique. So you can have an entire party who is wearing light armor, but not all of their light armors are going to feel the same or work the same. Not all of their mechanics are going to be the same. And so you can have an entire mercenary company that is with light armor, and it still is going to be able to reflect on who the character is and how the character has spec'd their character, and stat-wise, that is going to work. Right. I feel like I just repeated myself like 2-3 times there, but we can work with that. Light armor here. The big change there is just going to be upping that ragged cost. So for medium armor, 6543 is going to be the pristine, worn, damaged, ragged numbers. So, stop lagging, computer. It's just a Google Doc. 6, 5, 4, 3, and we're going to just plug this in down the line for all of these. Plate. And then heavy armor is going to be 8754. So basically, heavy armor is designed for characters to tank hits. Let's go ahead and we've got a couple options here. And shields is always going to be, I believe, 2s and okay. And shields will get a couple properties of their own to be once again fully flesh out what all they can do. But right now we're going to jump back up to the top here and tone some resistances, because once again there are issues here. Padded armor, yes. Bludgeoning, perfect. leather armor here. Once again, we were talking about how this system works, and so it is you get a single resistance with light armor. So leather armor is going to get slashing. And then, of course, then studded leather is going to get piercing. And so we're basically just seeing these armors stacking on top of each other, where you have, you know, layers of just kind of hides and such, and just cloth. That's going to be bludgeoning. Leather is going to be resisting cutting more than just layers of cloth here, layers of padding. So it's going to be slashing. And then when you actually have metal pieces in it, that's going to be, well, one, resisting slashing more and creating different areas for blades to slide off of your armor. But it is specifically more targeted towards piercing and having different points to kind of move those blades either off to the side or off of vital areas. I'm not gonna lie, there is a bit of a breakdown as far as fantastical verisimilitude in the design for this armor, but I think that is a bit more understandable because it is a fantasy TTRPG, and so there are allowances for that sort of fantasy where, like, studded leather and leather should theoretically have the same slashing resistance, but as far as the RPG is concerned, it's getting the piercing resistance because that is going to fill out the stable of armors here, so that way characters can have different options and different mechanical benefits at different tiers, or at the same tier here. Okay, so as far as medium armors and their resistances go, yes, hide armor here gets you resistance to cold damage. And this is not going to be an option here just because cold is, as far as armors are concerned, an exotic damage type. Most armors are going to be resisting your standard melee weapon attack. Melee and ranged weapon melee and ranged weapon attack damage types, that being bludgeoning, that being piercing, that being slashing. And so hide getting the resistance to cold, which is typically an elemental damage type. It can be a magical damage type, makes it unique in and of itself, so it's not going to be an option. Medium armor, disadvantage. We don't need to say tier 1 anymore just because we have 2 tiers of disadvantage, and so if you have multiple, you'll just have disadvantage tier 2. So you have disadvantage lowercase on all, and then we flipped the order and the presentation for these here. So it's going to be athletics, strength, acrobatics, dex, stealth, dex, and we're actually cutting out the other ones. So it's, once again, less skills than what is currently presented here. So on all, athletics, strength. And the unfortunate thing is, I do really like strength, athletics, dexterity, acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth all in the brackets there. We are removing that ability there, but I feel like it is going to be more clean to read, and it is going to be more identifiable that you're intended to use the skills rather than the ability scores, which is personally an annoyance of 5e with me, as far as I'm concerned. Athletics, strength. Sometimes I just miss. Athletics, strength, acrobatics, dexterity, stealth dexterity. ability changes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just copy that because that's going to go straight into all medium and heavy armor. So let's go ahead and just do that. Okay, sorry, getting that all plugged up there. Plate armor, yeah, and then shields work differently. Not really, but we're saving those. All right, so medium armor here, back to resistances. Chain shirt. Did I speak incorrectly? Okay, so it actually looks like medium armor does just give one. Okay, so two of the more expensive ones are going to be ores, and two of the more common ones are going to be singles. Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, I definitely did misspeak there in that light armor is always going to be single resistances. Medium armor is going to have some singles and some doubles, and then heavy armor is going to be all doubles. And so when it has doubles, it is going to be your choice. So at the end of the day, it's always going to be one resistance from your armor. It's just you get to choose and have more control over what that resistance is. The higher up and the more kind of armor, the more armor your armor is. So yeah, yep. So chain shirt is resisting slashing. Honestly, I have no idea how I landed on chain shirt would be resisting piercing damage, because like no matter how you think about it, if you are stabbing someone who is in chains, that is going to catch the tip of the blade, and it is going to allow the force vectors of that weapon to push apart the chains and break the chains, stabbing you in the process. Looking up how weapons work, how armor works, piercing damage is how you are intended to break chainmail. Why at one point in time I thought chain shirt would give you resistance to piercing damage makes no goddamn sense to me at all. So chain shirt here, we're changing that to slashing because one, that's what it was for. Two, that makes more sense logically, and three, it doesn't make me look like an idiot. So yeah, chain shirt, slashing, hide is cold damage, and then scale mail here, that's going to be our piercing option for a single point of contact in the medium armor department. Piercing, because it is a bunch of these different scales and plates on you, it's going to be much more reasonable for that to dent, deform, and repel a piercing blade strike than an armor that is literally made of holes. Well, not made of holes, but like designed to be holes so that it can have a blade skate across the edge. Yes, yeah. Scale mail, piercing. The breastplate here is going to be piercing or slashing, which your choice of piercing or slashing. We can get rid of that capital C there. But yeah, piercing or slashing damage. Half plate is going to be your choice. See, even a month ago, I was being inconsistent. Now, because it should be piercing, slashing, or bludgeoning per my notes. So it says piercing or slashing. Half plate, I'm going to just say piercing or bludgeoning. Half plate, it's going to be great against slashing or bludgeoning. Your choice of slashing damage or bludgeoning damage. I'm holding myself to consistency here, or at least trying. Yeah, breastplate, piercing, or here. Let's just look at pictures. Does this look like it's going to resist what? It is. Breastplate is going to be piercing or slashing. I mean, that looks like it's the intend. I mean, it looks like it's intended to stop all of them. But like, once again, this is where we have to suspend a bit of our verisimilitude. Whereas half plate here is more. It's more dense. It's more heavy. So I'm thinking that that's going to be better for, you know, heavier things. It's going to be better against bludgeoning. Once again, a little bit of verisimilitude in a suspension here, and so we are going to just say it's slashing or bludgeoning. And for everyone here, you have now entered into a verbal contract, and we're not going to question it further. Thank you very much for your so heavy armor there. Let's go ahead and jump down here. So this is going to be your choice of 2. Ringmail. Ringmail, as I've learned doing a bit of research here, has never really existed. It is a construct of fantasy, but because it's a cool fantasy, it persists, and so it's sticking around in the game. Ringmail gets you your choice of bludgeoning or slashing damage as far as a resistance goes, and that is not going to be changing at any point in time. It looks like I might have tried to make this piercing as well, which is even more stupid than having chainmail. So, you know. Oh, wait. Chainmail. Piercing damage. Once again, nobody say a word. Chainmail here is not designed to be resistant to piercing damage, you absolute fool. So this is going to be, because it's 2, it is going to be slashing, obviously, and I think we're going to throw bludgeoning on there. Unfortunately, that makes it the same as ring. Which, man, I really don't like that. I want one of these to do piercing. I want one of these to do piercing. Can we create a justification for ourselves? These are the 2s here. Half plate here is piercing or slashing. This is slashing, bludgeoning. One, it should be bludgeoning or slashing because alphabetized. Bludgeoning or slashing. There we go. Heavy armor is always in hammers. So I think that means we're going to just have to make sure for splint armor and plate armor that both of those have piercing involved. That's the justification, right? So yeah, splint armor is going to be. What does splint armor look like? I looked it up when I was doing some of these basic notes here. Okay. Splint armor. What does this look like? Okay. So yeah, plate. It's a bunch of little plates here. Leather. So this is 100% for piercing. This is kind of the next evolutionary step of studded leather. It kind of looks like, to my eye, not being a huge weapons person. I'm imagining that the kind of leather in between here is going to cause a bit more flexibility here. So I'm going to use that as as justification to say piercing or slashing. Well, hang on. Heavy armor, right now we have a bludgeoning slashing, we have a bludgeoning slashing. So let's do a. I guess we're overusing slashing. Man. So piercing. Chainmail shouldn't be bludgeoning. It's so flexible. Yeah, let's go ahead and just say your choice of piercing or slashing. And then the next one will have to be like piercing and bludgeoning. Plate armor. Oh wow, that looks like piercing and bludgeoning. Bludgeoning or piercing. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Here, give me one quick second. I got a text message and that I'm gonna need to respond to, so give me about a minute or two at the most. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Hang on. Hang on. Looks like there's a bit of a weird bug. And is everything still working here? Oh, yep, everything's fine. Awesome. Awesome. I was worried that the stream had died. So yes, plate armor here, bludgeoning and piercing, and that is your choice of those two there. Disadvantage same as medium lists. Movement minus 5 feet to your base movement speed. So let's go ahead and tweak that for all heavy here. Minus 5 feet. Base movement speed. No need to write out feet, so you're using the common abbreviation there, and that is going to be common throughout the game. Go, boom, boom, and all right. Okay, that's still within the... Here I was trying to make my spacing all good. Oh well. Okay. So let's go ahead and create our table. I'm going to reference. I believe we have a weapons table. Why did that jump over there? That's the haunted one. Do we have a weapons table here that I can copy as a reference? No. All right. So we're going to be making one ourselves for both weapons and armor. Do we have something over here that I can use as a template? It's not going to be any classes. I don't think I would. Oh, wait, no, hang on. Skills. There. That's the kind of table I'm looking for here. And once again, this is just to get things started. It's genuinely going to be completely different. Okay, so we have our armor type. We are going to have its... Would it be too cheeky to call it armor class? Armor type. We have its resistance. We're going to have it, what? Armors aren't going to necessarily have features built in. Okay, so we can have movement, and then we're going to have movement and performance, skills. How did we phrase that on the normal? We just said skills. Okay, and let's go ahead and just reset these as far as column width. Table options there. Armor type. Okay, so armor type, resistances, movement, skill, disadvantages. These two here can shrink. Yeah, probably about that much there. Skill disadvantages is probably going to be a larger column here. Movement can shrink for sure. And then I think if we bump up both resistances and skill disadvantages, we can get this back to where it needs to be. Where is our typical? Typical is going to be 6.5, so we can probably do a point or two more here for these as far as formatting goes. Boom. And that's a little bit over. It'll be fine. Actually, hang on. We don't need armor type to be on here because we'll have shields. And so if we can get rid of this column, well, let's just go ahead and bump all up by one. That's not what I meant. Armor, that's got room. Movement can go up by... Let's go ahead and just do... No, it's fine. And then resistances, let's just put it straight up at 2. Then disadvantages will take us the rest of the way. Perfect. Perfect. We can get rid of the text content of these cells. And then we're going to want to create subheadings on the table for light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, and shields. All right. Row above. This is going to be a merged row. For light armor, as far as this merged row's background color. Ideally, I'd like it to be this. That's just gray. Okay. I think we can work with that now, and we'll see if we set all of these to let's just see what this would look like at dark gray. That'll work. So our light armors here are going to be done as follows. We don't need to have the word armor. We have padded, we have leather, then we have studded. Maybe we should have bumped up a bit. Resistance is 2. Let's set that to 2. Armor will pump up. I'll start it left there. Drop that by 0.1. And where are we all of a sudden? Sorry. Table formatting is something that I care deeply about, and I don't know, maybe shouldn't. I just want it to look right. And we have our medium armor collection here, which is going to be hide. Which is going to be scale mail. No, sorry, chain shirt for one. And we have scale mail. Then we have breastplate. Then we have half plate. And a lot of these are just going to be kind of coming from 5e. So heavy armor, that's going to be our ring mail. Going to be our chain mail. That's going to be our splint armor. That is going to be our plate armor. And then also shields, which are, I believe, just light, medium, and heavy. Why can't I get shield to come out right when I type it that first time? There we go. Then every other column here underneath is good for deletion. Row. You know what I mean. Okay. Resistances. So this is just going to be filling out the table. My drafting tab here. There we go. You know, I honestly can't say that this is probably the most watchable, but like, we're getting stuff done, and that's. And then we'll run into stride and have a lot more things with weapon properties, with weapon flourishes. That's what. Oh, I'm putting this all in the way. Oh no. Okay. No, I haven't. Okay, and table to the left, resources to the right. All right, let's go. Leather is slashing. Studded leather is piercing. Hide armor here is cold. Chain shirt is slashing. Scale mail is piercing. And then our skill disadvantages here are going to be don't need precursor text. Oh, that's 3 lines. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. Especially because this is going to persist for so long. Okay. Movement, you're shrinking. I boosted it and it changed nothing. Oh no. Armor is as small as it can go. Resistances. Bludgeoning or slashing. Let's just plug that in here. Damn it, that's all on one line. That's unfortunate. So if we're gonna push resistances to 2 lines, we need to then have disadvantages also be on 2 lines. How much can we reduce resistances by? Oh, it's not automatically scale this. Of course it's not. So that's fine, I believe, for disadvantages. If we push this back out, can push this out to give it a little bit more room to breathe. Okay, let's give this one a little less room so that way movement can have one more push. I think that's livable. I think that we can work with that. Okay. Half plate here is going to be, once again, bludgeoning or slashing, because breastplate was actually going to be piercing or slashing. Alright, heavy armor is going to be bludgeoning or slashing, bludgeoning or slashing. Piercing or slashing, bludgeoning or piercing. And then movements here is going to be just dashes throughout there. Movements in heavy armor. Actually, was heavy armor... Yeah, heavy armor was going to be bumping movement to minus. So let's actually go ahead and just update that across the board here. And a lot of that, a lot of making what the movement reduction for heavy armor is going to be is coming so that we can have shields that will reduce movement speed by -5. So your heavy shields here are just going to be -5 movement speed. Yeah, heavy shield there. And so that way it's not the shield and the armor combined, so that way you can have medium armor and maybe a heavy shield. -10 feet. Shields are not going to convey resistances, for one. Movement speed is only affecting the heavy. Then we have skill disadvantages on the medium and the heavy, and that is going to be disadvantage on insight and perception because you've got a big shield in front of your face. When you're holding it up, you have disadvantage on all insight wisdom and perception wisdom. Ability challenges. So for our table here, insight and perception. There we go. Boom. I don't know how else we can improve that. Cool. Cool. A lot of the goal of formatting here is just so that players who are experienced with the game can look at this table here, know that light armor works at this armor point stand here, or that armor point pattern there, and just get everything off of this table here. Whereas more novice players can then maybe make an index card that has all of this information on it for themselves to, carry with their character sheet. And then also GMs can look here specifically for padded armor, and it'll have cost to purchase, cost to repair, average sale value. And so as far as players go, they probably will be able to get away with just using the table here. Honestly, we might even put the pristine, worn, damaged, rugged right after the light armor here, so that way it's all on the table here. And so that is nice and easy to use for experienced players, and then we have more complex and complete breakdowns for newer players with more information for GMs on each, each specific type of armor. Actually, yeah, let's just do that. Let's just do that. We don't need to talk about it. Let's just do it. Pristine. Here for armor. So pristine light armor is going to be 4322. Pristine 4, worn 3, damaged 2, ragged 2. So then we're just gonna put like 2 spaces. That seems fine. And then we'll copy this template here for medium armor. Actually, hang on. I know we merged cells here. Why don't we just, instead of having it be 2 spaces after, we just have it be a split column. Since this is only going to be taking an amount, unmerge those cells. Boom, copy, delete. And so then we merge everything over here. And there we go. Light armor. No, bolding it looks wrong. So yeah, unmerge these cells here, and then merge all of these 3 over here. That'll be where we track our stuff. Yeah, no, this is all gonna be for basically experienced players. Like, experienced players are all they need is this table, but then everything else exists for the GM and for new players. What would this look like? Yeah, that's fine. So medium is 6543. Then heavy is going to be 8754. And 4, there we go. And then shields are going to be similar, but also a little bit different in that they will get different armor points here. I think that these numbers are wrong. I just haven't written them up on my document here as far as whether or not they are going to be 2211 or if it's going to be 3221. These numbers are pretty fine. 3322. Maybe 3321. Actually, hang on. Then this wouldn't work for shields in general. We don't need that there. So shields actually can merge the entire column. I don't know. I'm gonna need to think about how we format for shields. Because right now, as far as this area on the table goes, it's not that full. And we want this table to be helpful. Honestly, I think this is a good stopping place. I did tease a little bit of what the extra and there is with the Dark Sun stuff. I think we're gonna jump into weapons next stream. Yeah. I think everything's been going great so far here, but I think I just kind of need to take a second, look over how shields work, and then we'll be able to go from there. So hang on, let me. What I've been wanting to do is, like, as far as Twitch is concerned, I want to get into the habit of raiding out. So let's see what I can do there, because I've been forgetting to do that, and I've got a post-it note to make sure that I remember to do that. And because I want to build a community with folks. So please load Twitch on my other monitor here. Let's see who all's available, who all's streaming. Yeah, explore raid browser. There we go. Hell yeah. Who all's doing world building here today? Building here questions. That's cool. That's AI all over. I'm not writing to them no matter what. Who doesn't have a lot of viewers? Let's see here. Let's see here. Let's look in the tabletop RPGs. See if we can rate out. Who all is doing world building? Who's doing world building? Please let there be some. Not looking promising there. Just by it's okay. Let's see. Session. I don't have anything against going to a session, but ideally I want to do someone who's doing carry. Or like subclass design. D&D chat and prep. Hell yeah. What else going on? Wait, are you? Stream has been up for 4 hours, 18 minutes. Are they closing down? No. Okay. Chat was saying goodbye there. Sorry, I'm still getting used to learning Twitch here, and I want to. Where is the Marines? Raid routes. Thank you for putting up with me here as I figure this out. You. Oh, yeah, we're raiding the Mighty Duck here. There we go, and let's see here. All right, so yeah, for my stream here, that's going to be the end of it there. Let me go ahead and just kind of get everything closing out here. Boom. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys had a fantastic time, and I will see you around.